is a story from a long time ago that's been told over and over and over. I heard that back then, whales were the size of minnows, and minnows the size of whales. Snow was burning hot, and the wood blackener was cold, and we plucked wool out of felt and sewed it onto Melfa to keep them warm. People back then were like children, who've discovered they have a voice, but haven't yet learnt how to use it. They didn't know the names of things, or how to whisper, or the right times to raise their voices. They spoke carelessly and loudly, ignoring the importance of words. Even when they went hunting, they'd shout every sentence, and the animals would know to hide. When they went fishing, they'd beat the water into a frenzy and complain constantly about their hunger. When they found plants, they'd eat even the roots, and leave the ground white and bare. They had no patience, and no love for the world. I heard, but maybe it's not true, that back then there was a girl called Anakura, and a boy called Samafalla. I heard that when she was young, Anakura would silently slip away from her father's camp and explore, learning how the stars told the way. She was silent as the wind, and the birds and fish didn't move when she came near. And Samafalla would walk in the summer grass, quiet as a breeze. Even the most timid of prey didn't run from him, and the fiercest of predators didn't attack, but let him sit beside them as a friend. One autumn, Anakura and Samafalla met, and decided they liked each other, so Anakura went with his winter family. She showed him all the things she loved about the world, and he showed her the same, and they continued to decide they liked each other. They may have been more sensible than most, but this was a long time ago, and they weren't as sensible as we are now. They told each other their lives would be twisted together like a braid, and that they'd try to love each other forever, and they promised to only grow old together. When spring came, Anakura went back to her summer family, and Samafalla to his. When autumn came, they went together to Samafalla's winter family. They went on like that for many, many years. In those years they had 15 sons and 15 daughters, and never thought anything strange about that. After 30 winters, they stopped having children. I suppose that kind of thing must get boring after 30 winters of it. I don't think anyone else in the world could say for sure. Anakura and Samafalla taught their children how to speak with care, and walk quietly, and wait in still silence. And as their sons brought wives into the family, and their daughters went off with their husbands, more and more people learned from them. And soon they began to have grandchildren too, and their teaching spread further. Their oldest daughter looked older than Anakura, and their oldest son looked older than Samafalla, but nobody thought anything strange about that. Now that people were quiet, and looked at the world with patience, they began to see things they had never seen or thought to have words for before. So Anakura gave names to the stars and the fish, and Samafalla gave names to the animals and the plants, and together they named the birds. And as their grandchildren, and their grandchildren's children spread across the island, they took those names with them. They had each lived for 100 years now, and their children were dying of old age, but Anakura and Samafalla still looked healthy and young. The story goes that this was when they remembered the promises they had made to each other so long ago, and realised they had come true. For half of every year they lived apart, and so they didn't age, and every half year they spent together was another half year closer to death. They didn't want to die. As much as they loved each other, they loved the world more, and each wanted the other to live. So every other winter, Anakura became a man, so he could go with his own winter family rather than Samafalla's, and the next winter she'd become a woman and go with Samafalla. When they'd been alive for 150 years, they went together every 4th winter, and then every 8th. And when they had been living for 500 years, they met only one day every decade. Maybe you've heard some other stories from this time, where there's a wise old man called Anakura. That's the same person. But in this story, I'm calling her a woman, because this story is about her relationship with Samafalla, and she was a woman in that. The last day they saw each other, they'd been alive for 5,000 years. Their souls were like embers on the brink of burning out. Their bodies were as fragile as ice about to melt. They saw each other across the snow, and they saw that one more day together and they'd die. So they turned and walked away, and never met again. I heard, but maybe it's not true, that they're still here. You can hear them too. Listen to the wind that pushes away the clouds to reveal the stars, or the breeze that brings the scent of spring. That's why we call the cold wind Anakura and the warm wind Samafalla.